Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with another in our occasional series of What Are You Listening to Lately? Now, as I mentioned in a previous video, I have been listening to American composers' takes on ballet music for Martha Graham and others. And most recently, this wonderful disc, largely wonderful, with one exception we'll get to in a moment, of music by Samuel Barber, featuring the Boston Modern Orchestra Project under Gil Rose on their own label, BMOP, the Boston Modern Orchestra Project. I have to say, they wrote something here that sort of struck me. BMOP Sound, the label of the acclaimed Boston Modern Orchestra Project, explores the evolution of the music formerly known as classical. I must have missed something. When was it formerly known as classical? What is it known as then, if it's not known as classical? I mean, must we parse words, folks? I mean, really? Just to be trendy, modern, and or politically correct? I don't know. I don't know what they're getting at. All I care about anyway is the music, but that kind of like hit me. You know what I mean? Here we have three works by Barber. We have Knoxville, Summer of 1915, Medea, and A Hand of Bridge. Now, the interesting thing about Medea, I've been obsessing about Medea lately, is that Barber wrote Medea 3 separate times. And this is the original, authentic, original ballet, which Martha Graham called various things. Eventually, Cave of the Heart, or Cave of the Serpent, or Bad Day in Brooklyn. I don't know. She had all kinds of names. And eventually Barber just said, listen, I mean, it's about Medea. Why don't we just call it Medea? Good idea. Anyway, we all know the story. Medea gets abandoned by Jason. She murders her children. You know, it's a very dark story. And this is a very somber ballet. And the problem with the ballet, as I see it anyway, is that it's scored for chamber forces because it was Martha Graham's company, just as Appalachian Spring originally was. So it's a wind quintet with, winds who alternate, they double on extra instruments, and a string quintet. And that's basically what you get. And a piano, of course, got to have a piano. So the story is one of high drama, incredible passion, insane desire for vengeance and hot-blooded tension, and it's real soap opera-like stuff, right? And frankly, that little tiny ensemble doesn't do it. It just doesn't do it. However good the performance is, and this is a good performance, except for track 8 here, which is the 7th number. There are 9 numbers in all, which has Medea's Dance of Vengeance. You know, the Dance of Vengeance. Boy, is that a great stuff. I have to tell you something about the Dance of Vengeance. In its orchestral final form, which we'll get to in a minute, it's exactly 4 minutes long in certain performances, which is just the right length for your average free skate, Olympic style figure skating female routine. And when I was doing music for Olympic skaters and other skaters, for skaters generally, I was boiling down the entire classical repertoire into little 4-minute segments. And I said, this is perfect. You don't have to do anything to it. You just play the Dance of Vengeance. The problem was I couldn't get these little skaterettes to do Medea. I mean, they wanted to do Carmen, they wanted to do Tchaikovsky, all that stuff, the usual things. And their choreographers were all these, wannabe Bolshoi Russian ballerinas who ran around in their fur coats and fur hats going, no, we must do Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff. They had no idea about music. So it was really difficult, but it would have been perfect. I am looking for one of these nasty little skaters, like a Tanya Harding type, who really could get into the character of Medea and dance the Dance of Vengeance. It's even better to do it now because they've eliminated all of these requirements about fast music and slow music and whatnot, so you can do complete works. But anyway, so if you're out there, ice skater person, think about Medea. Great story. Okay, I know you may not want to, it's scary and horrible, but it'll make you stand out. It will. So anyway, so here's Medea. And just the chamber ensemble, I find rather flat. And the work itself, I mean, it's Barber. It has wonderful ideas in it, but it's a little long for its material. And because the story is so somber and so, completely, dreary, the music itself is rather dark, and it just needs more color and weight and volume than we get here. And this recording, like I said, of the Dance of Vengeance, it's really flat. It's too slow. I mean, come on, Gil, what were you thinking? It's got to have some. I mean, I know he didn't want it to sound like a rumba, which is sort of what it is. It's like a hoochie coochie dance in a way. So he wanted to make it but it doesn't give you the vengeance. So that's one issue. But otherwise, this is an absolutely splendid disc. Now, as far as Medea goes, just so you all know, Barber made 3 versions of Medea. There was the original, which we almost never hear, which is why this recording of it is important. Then there was an orchestral suite where he condensed it down into, I think, 7 numbers instead of 9, something like that. That was recorded by like Howard Hansen and Marin Alsop on Naxos, and that's around. And that's very interesting because it has, the oomph that the score lacked. And boy, does it make a big difference. It's so much more convincing in the larger orchestra format, just for the sheer weight and color that the extra instruments give it. But then he did what we now know and love as Medea's Meditation and Dance of Vengeance, which Barber, at the end of his life in 1980 or 81 or whenever he died, said, let's just call it Medea's Dance of Vengeance. But it actually consists of music from the entire ballet, including some of the very opening stuff. And it works wonderfully well. I mean, as a 13-minute condensation of the entire piece, as a tone poem, effectively, which is what it is. It's clearly the best, and it's the best because it makes the most effective use of the material. You don't have to hear it quite as often as you do in the ballet or in the suite, and it makes the biggest impact through the repetition that's left. And I just think it's a fabulous exercise in hearing a composer refine his ideas until he finds their ideal form. Because there's no question that Medea's Dance of Vengeance is the ideal form of this material in the ballet, where it's kind of spread out and more diffuse. So I was listening and comparing all these performances of all this stuff. It's been tremendous fun and very, very educational. It really has. So if you want to do it, I recommend it very strongly because it's a good exercise in listening and very enjoyable because music is wonderful, of course. But then we have the other works here. First, Knoxville Summer of 1915. This is gorgeously sung, beautifully sung by Kristen Watson, soprano. She's really excellent. She gets the innocence, the wonder, the tenderness of the music. I detest this piece. It drives me crazy for the same reason everyone else loves it, because people who were there say, oh, it just reminds me of my childhood. It was exactly the way I remember growing up in Knoxville or wherever I grew up. I mean, Barber was in Westchester, Pennsylvania, but, on the porch at night and the summer, and it's hot and bugs are flying around and a horse and buggy drives by and, and he's in a cradle being, oh God, I just want to scream. And the music and text setting is perfect. This is one of the great masterpieces for music and words in their relationship to one another. I cannot imagine a more ideal setting of this text. And I recognize that, whether I like it or not is irrelevant. It's a masterpiece. It's a screaming masterpiece. It's beautiful. It's like nothing else. And it's so absolutely right. And I confess that freely. I really do. But if I just hear, it has become the time of evening, I am sitting on the porch and Mom and Dad are chatting about nothing in particular, nothing. I mean, there's a whole thing here about nothing. It's music about nothing. It's a nothing day. Nothing's happening. Nothing matters. It's all just serenity. Yeah, okay. I mean, it's just not my cup of tea. I what can I say? It is a lot of yours, I know, because a lot of you love it. And I don't blame you, because I hear it and I'm aghast and admiration for the beauty and the aptness of the musical setting of this text. So there you go. And it's a wonderful performance. I mean, really, really, Kristen Watson is just terrific. Absolutely terrific. I've never heard a better performance about nothing. But then we get the opera, the 10-minute long opera, A Hand of Bridge, which is delicious. Now, this is more up my alley. This is a dysfunctional suburban two suburban couples. They're playing a hand of bridge, and the music is wonderfully differentiated with a kind of, sort of pop music, piano and percussion thing for when they're playing cards. But then you hear what's in their minds. And one of them wants to buy a hat. That's all she could think about, is buying a hat with peacock feathers. And the other is in love with some girl at the office named Cymbeline or something like that. And all he thinks about is Cymbeline. And the other one wants to be rich. And they all have their petty, uninteresting, tawdry little concerns which are going on while they're playing this little hand of bridge. And it ends with, the queen gets trumped. Yes. And it's wonderful. A wonderful, witty, fun, snarky little piece, which is so much more the kind of thing that gets my juices flowing rather than, Knoxville Summer of 1915. So this is a wonderful disc. Let's not kid ourselves. It's a terrific disc. And like I said, it's the Modern Orchestra Project under Gil Rose. But what I really have been doing, aside from listening to all that stuff, is comparing Medea. And Medeas, lots of Medeas, all the different recordings and performances. And it's been enormous fun. And I like I said, I can't recommend it strongly enough to those of you who are curious about things like that. Who want to have a little musical adventure in listening and in composition, how composers refine and shape their ideas from a somewhat amorphous blob of an original, but still, it's effective, it's lovely music, but it's amorphous, to a more focused sort of middle phase, to a final screaming masterpiece. And there's a lot of screaming. It's Medea, after all, so it's a screaming masterpiece. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.